Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron. I hope you have an incredible day or night in Jesus. We're looking at perfection in God's monotheism. And does perfection, that God is perfect in every way, show that there's only one God? So we've been doing this last couple of mornings. You may want to check out those videos and thousands of other videos here on our channel. We try to be a repository of truth. So God bless you. Let's get started. Thanks for being here. So, could two gods, this is theoretically, be distinguished by a difference in their essential properties, that they're holy, that they're loved, that they're omnipotent, etc.? So the doctrine of divine simplicity may entail that they can't. That if you've got God who is all knowledge, who is a spirit, who is all powerful, you couldn't have two of those because they'd be identical. And so once you leave divine simplicity and go into perfection of that simplicity, same thing. How would you differentiate between one God and the other? You might say a center of consciousness, but would the center of consciousness include inferiorities and on and so forth? But if you're just talking about essentiality of perfection, wisdom, knowledge, because when you talk about centers of consciousness, then they would both have the identical knowledge of each other, which again conflates them into the same thing. So you really couldn't, you might say, well, there are two centers of cost and personality. That means one of the gods is lacking in something, which would by definition not make him God. So each God would obviously have all the properties essential to divinity. We're talking about monotheism, omniscience, omnipotence, perfect goodness, and the like. But could they be differentiated by essential properties peculiar to each? Could, in other words, the first God have an essential property which the second God lacks, or vice versa? Zagzebski in 1989 thinks that it can't. Human beings are distinguished in virtue of their having different individual essences, and human rational beings and angelic rational beings are distinguished in virtue of their possessing the properties essential to humanity and angelhood, respectively. But no individual human way of being human exhausts the fullness of humanity, the many ways of being human, and neither humanity nor angelhood exhausts the fullness of rationality, the many different ways of being rational. Being divine, on the other hand, entails being holy or perfectly divine, that is, being everything a divine being could possibly be. So two divine beings could not differ in an essential property in the way which individual human beings and angelic beings can. That is Zagzebski in 1981, pages 10 or 11. Now, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. So humans are different. I'm Steve, my wife Sandy, different ones of you. We're all different, even though we're in the image of God. But we are not perfect. Angels are not perfect in the sense of omniscience and in all powerfulness. But God is. And so then you run into the question, the reason you can't have two gods is because there's no way to differentiate them. If you had two all perfects, all knowings, all omniscience, all omnipresence, on and so forth, omnibenevolence, then if they're all that, then they're just going to be one God in simplicity of essence, one in mind, because they couldn't have a mind that was different than another. And so, is this argument entirely compelling, though? I would say yes. Arguably, it's impossible for any individual to exemplify all the possible ways of being human. Reading Adam Weishaupt, he thought that was a real good thing to do. Or of all the possible ways of being rational, as a philosopher, not of his other things. So why assume that it's possible for a being to exemplify all the possible ways of being divine? And I would say, because that means he wouldn't be God if he didn't. Why think, in other words, that there aren't different mutually exclusive ways of exemplifying divinity, being Allah as depicted in the Quran, for example, or being the triune God of Christianity, at least certain parts, or the Vishnu of the Sri Vaishnavas? Or again, suppose that the relevant differentiating property is having a certain emotional or mental temper Yahweh's as depicted in the Hebrew Bible or Krishna's as depicted in the Bhagavata Purana. Suppose further that neither of these emotional or mental tempers is better or more worshipful than the other. Is there an open question, at least, whether either of these emotional mental tempers is essential to divinity, although they may be essential to being Yahweh or being Krishna, respectively? If they aren't, then it is by no means clear that any being can exhaust the fullness of divinity. And these last two arguments of simplicity and perfection hinge on claims that not be accepted by all theists or believers in God. That God is simple, for example, there are any real individual essences, or their holy or perfectly divine being exhausts the fullness of divinity. I would say that it is not possible for a God to be omnipotent, the potentiality of all power, and omniscient and omnibenevolent and the like, and not he exhausts everything that God could be. And so in this treatise here on plato.stanford.edu, the Stanford Dictionary of Philosophy tends to lead in a little different direction. But I would answer in the affirmative that God's simplicity ultimately leads to the fact that he's one, and God's perfection leads to monotheism, the fact that God is one. And this is ultimately revealed to us, obviously, in Holy Scripture, his divine mind to us. So God bless you. Thanks for being here. Join us daily. Check out our other videos. We'll see you. Bye-bye.